Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to Theory of Literatures class, online class. Today we would like to discuss about the theory, one of theory of literatures. Actually, we would like to discuss about the structuralism, but before we go to structuralisms, we will explain first about the previous theory that precede the structuralisms. It is Russian Formalisms and New Critics. Okay, in this discussion, we would like to study some concepts proposed by Formalisms and New Critics. As you can see in the screen, in Formalisms, it is proposed the concept of literariness, the familiarizations, and the automatization, fabula, sujet, while in New Critics, the concept like the text itself, intentional policy, effective policy, timelessness and autonomy of literature, heresy of paraphrase, organic unity, and close reading. Okay, let's go to the first theory. It is formalisms. Theory of formalisms here propose that literature is science. It is a science that differs from other disciplines of science such as sociology, mathematics, anthropology, physics, chemistry, and all others disciplines. As a discipline, literatures focus on the poetic language, not the ordinary language. Yeah. So what makes something literatures? It is because poetic language. In other terms, the formalism said literariness. Literariness here, what makes something become literatures, the value of literatures. It is in the poetic language, not the ordinary language. So why poetry is literatures? Because poetry use poetic language, not ordinary language. Next, so how to differentiate between ordinary language and poetic language? Ordinary language here are the languages, the words, the sentences that we usually use in our daily activity, while the poetic language here is a kind of manipulations of words of sentence to gain or to get the aesthetics effect. So for example, in ordinary language, you can say in Indonesia, lupakanlah aku. That is ordinary, that is common. You usually hear that in your conversation in a daily basis. While lumpuhkanlah ingatanku is a poetic language. It has the same meaning. Lumpuhkanlah ingatanku and lupakanlah aku. They are having the same meaning but different effect. Lupakanlah aku is ordinary, while lumpuhkanlah ingatanku is extraordinary. It is fresh expressions. Or in other examples like jangan kamu ragu padaku, never doubt to me. Here this expression is ordinary, while in the poetic language, just like what Hamlet said to Ophelia, he said, doubt thou, the star are fire, doubt that the sun doth move, doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt silence. Just like I have given you in a poetry class. Now, another question is how to make ordinary language into a poetic language. So, in literatures, according to formalisms, the most important thing is not what, but the how. How to make ordinary language into a poetic language. So, the content is not important, but how to manipulate all the devices or the technique to manipulate the language itself is the most important. In formalism terms, we have fabula and sujet. Fabula here is the content, while the sujet is the technique or devices. So in poetry, for example, it is not the word or the sentence which is important, no, but how the words or the sentence are used or manipulated by using technique like addiction, rhyme, rhythms, and then allusions and other figurative language, etc. That is the most important. Okay, just like this in the picture, the important thing is not the content. When you see the picture, it is finger, right? Two finger stick into one. The finger here is not important. The important thing is how to make this finger that is into a special thing. You have two finger. It is ordinary. It is common. But when you draw the two finger with using a certain technique to produce this kinds of picture, it is extraordinary. This is like the fabula and sujet. The fabula is the finger. The sujet here is the technique or the devices to make these kinds of picture. So how to make ordinary language into a poetic language? Here the formalisms propose the concept of deautomatizations or defamiliarizations. Defamiliarization or deautomatization is making the language into strange, as if it is the first times we hear it. It is the fresh expressions. So, for example, lupakanlah aku here is ordinary. How to make it poetic? You have to make it strange. You have to defamiliarize it by using the metaphor, technique of metaphor. Lumpuhkanlah ingatanku. Lumpuhkanlah ingatanku here is a kind of metaphor. Yeah. You can also use other devices to make the language into strange things. Okay, by using the diction, by using the rhythm, rhymes, etc., by using the plot, using the manipulations of the character, characterization, etc., etc. So the way to make it strange of a language is by using the devices. It is like this. Another example. You see, this homes is familiar. It is not special. Yeah, we can find it everywhere in Pekalongan in these types. And how about this? This is extraordinary. This is special. Why is it special? Because the constructor built the house by using technique, certain technique that make as if the houses is built up and down, the roof down while the foundations is up there. Okay, it is like defamiliarization. We see this house as if this is the first time we see this kind of house, and it is fresh and it is interesting. The same like in poetry, lumpuhkanlah aku. It's a strange thing. It is the fresh thing. It's as if this is the first times we hear it, and it is more interesting than just lupakanlah aku. This house is more interesting than this house, okay, because there is the defamiliarization or the automatization or making strange by using certain technique. Okay, take a look in these kinds of poems. Kelas Antariksa by Ribut Ahwandi, one of the lecturers in FKIP. Here in these poems you can find some devices that make the language into strings. For example, ingatanku membentur dinding. It is strange because we cannot find it in an ordinary language, in our ordinary conversation. You never say ingatanku membentur dinding loh. It is strange. So it is a poetic because there is a manipulations of a diction here. There is a devices of figurative language used to create this expression. Ingatanku membentur dinding dalam sudut 4 titik. Same here, sudut 4 titik here is the metaphor of a class. It's like our traditional class. It is cubes-like with 4 sides with 4 angles there. Okay, see that. So here in Kelas Antariksa we can find some defamiliarizations used to make or to get the aesthetic effect. Okay, it's different from the communication in a daily basis. The same here in these poems. These poems is special because it manipulates the words, it manipulates the letter even, manipulates the letter, so we see it as if it is the first time, it is fresh, it is not like a ordinary expression we find in a daily basis. Okay, now let's go to the new criticisms. The same like formalisms, the focus of literature here is not on the not on the context, but on the text, on the language itself. In other words, New Critic said literature is a text, and we have to find the meaning of the text from the text itself, not from other external elements. So just like what I have given you before, the text about the businessman turn off the light, then a man appear, etc., etc. How to get the meaning of that text? It is by observing the text itself, not asking to the author, not asking to the other reader, but you have to focus on the text itself. So in new criticisms, to get the meaning, we don't have to ask the author to know about the poetry of Shakespeare. You don't have to go to Shakespeare graveyard and then ask Shakespeare about what do you mean in your drama Romeo and Juliet or Hamlet itself. When we ask the author about the meaning of his work, we have what we call as an intentional fallacy. Intentional fallacy. It is a mistake of intention. The same, we don't have to ask other reader to know the meaning of the works or literary works. For example, if we want to know the meaning of Romeo and Juliet, we just read it. We just focus on the text, the element of the text, how Shakespeare represents Romeo and Juliet, how Shakespeare described about the Romeo family, describe about the conflicts, etc. We don't have to ask the reader. When we ask the reader, we do affective fallacy in New Critics term, kesalahan affective, because reader usually use emotion, use their emotion, use their previous assumption. So there will be so much mistake. Just like we have done in the text of businessmen turn off the lights. You use your own previous assumption to guess that there is a robbery, although in fact there is no robbery. It is just your assumption. It is just your emotion. When there is a word of police, men demand money in the store, etc. In your mind, in your assumption, oh, there is a robbery, but the fact is not. You just only follow your assumption, follow your emotions, etc. That is what we call as an affective fallacy. Another concept of new criticism is that literary works is a timeless. Literary works is immortal. It will survive. It will survive many years, even many centuries. For example, as you can see in the screen, Mahabharat here is the works of Valmiki 100 centuries before, and until now people still know Mahabharata, because this work is masterpiece. It can survive 100 years or even centuries. And then the autonomy of literatures. The autonomy here means that literary works can talk its meaning, that literary works don't have to you don't have to ask other people, you don't have to ask the creators or the author or the reader to know the meaning. The meaning is on the text. So the works of literature is autonomous. The other concept is all for one for all. It means that literary works have many elements. However, all elements are unites. All elements are unites into one meaning. So that's why we call say all for one for all. That in literary elements there are many elements. However, each elements are related to other elements. Next, about the organic unity. The organic unity here is the concept that literatures have a unity, that the good literatures the good literary works are the works that have many elements, but those elements are related to each other to build a unity, or we call it organic unity. So, for example, when the novels have many elements like a plot, like a stage, like a characterizations, but all elements can relate to each other elements, creates the meaning, the unity of a meaning. That is what we call as organic unity. Okay. Nah, because literary work is a kind of organic unity, kesatuan, so we cannot paraphrase it. We cannot make it we cannot simplify it. In New Critics terms, it is a heresy of paraphrase. Heresy mean in Indonesia is bid'ah. So it is a bid'ah to paraphrase or to summarize or simplify the literary works, because you will destroy the meaning. When you, for example, make poetry into a prose, or make a prose into a poetry, you destroy the meaning, you destroy the elements of literary works. because they are unity. Next, about the concept of close reading. According to New Critics, the how to get the meaning from literary work, it is through close reading. Close reading here means you have to read it once or more than once, twice, etc. And then you make notes on the important things, you breaking down the elements, and then you find the relations of each element to build one meaning. That is what we call as a close reading. Okay, so in close reading, to find the meaning of a poem, you have to focus not on the only on the sentence or the words, but how the words or the sentence are organized or represented in a diction, word choice, in a structure, in the syntax, and literary devices, the metaphor used, the metonymy of figurative language used, etc., the tone, etc. So focus on the devices, not on the content. We can have the same contents but different devices. For example, we can find lots of story as the same content, but different devices, so it creates different meaning. For example, Dylan and Ada Apa Dengan Cinta, the content is the same. It's about the love between two students, teenagers. Yeah, the content is the same. However, the way to represent it, the devices to present, to describe the love itself is different. That's why the meaning of Dylan and Ada Apa Dengan Cinta different. The meaning is different, although the content is the same about love of two teenagers, student of senior high school, that are with many problems in their relationships. Okay. So next, the methods of analysis is use the empiric observations. Empiric here, it means that you have to read the text itself. You have to analyze the text itself in the reality. Yeah? And then it's also inductive analysis, because you begin from the specific cases in the text and then you generalize it. Then the last is about the critique on new criticisms. There are some lacks in the concept of new criticism. The first is a lack of content. Literature is created in the context. Yeah? For example, Dylan is made in the context of the life in 1990s, with all the trends in 1990s, with all the, for example, the trend of teenagers, about the motor gangs, about the you can see in a film Cerdas Cermat, etc. All dynamics in that film has context in 1990s. Yeah? New criticisms didn't pay attention on that. Now, next, words mean in the context. Word cannot be separated from the context. When we say Jakarta, in our mind, Jakarta is the capital of Indonesia. The context of Jakarta is the capital, so it is a big city, etc., etc. The words means it not separated from the context. Next, no totally free or independent reader. Reader always bring their knowledge, foreknowledge, ideology, opinion, and making meaning. So in reading, we cannot free from our assumption, from our before knowledge, from our ideology. So the meanings created by one reader will be different from other readers. And that's it. the lack of new criticisms, because it doesn't accommodate about the reader foreknowledge, ideology in making meaning. It doesn't accommodate the meaning of the words that depend on the different context, different meaning, and then it's also uh, didn't accommodate that the content of the literature is depend on the context of literature, the context of time it's produced, the context of the reader, it's aimed for, etc. Okay, that's it about my explanations. Part one, theory of literatures. It is formalisms and new critics. To summarize the concept, the first is that formalism and criticism, new criticism, has the same basis. It is based on the text. It doesn't escape from the text. They are having the same assumption that the meaning we can get only from the text without asking the author, without asking the reader. And then the same, to find the meaning of literatures, formalism and new critic focus on the way, not the content, the way, the structure, the forms, the way the author represents the character by using a devices like characterization, by using the devices like figurative language and any other element. So in analyzing literatures, formalisms and new criticisms will focus on analyzing the elements of literatures and then related each element to gains or to get the holistic meaning. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much for listening. And then if you have a questions, you can type on the comment. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.